Hello there, IGN faithful. My name's Cam Shade, this is Lucy O'Brien.
Hello, everyone.
And we're going to have a chat today about Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2.
Yes.
Now, Lucy's here because you've actually played several hours of the game.
I have. Well, three and a half.
Three or so.
Yeah.
And I'm here because, well, I think it looks really cool. I haven't played it yet myself, but I'm really excited to kind of hear more about it. So I basically figured we'd sit down and I'd pepper you with some questions about it and find out what the dealio is.
What the dealio is. Okay, just a little sort of proclaimer, I suppose, before we begin.
A proclaimer?
Is that the right word?
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. What is a proclaimer?
The Proclaimers.
Right.
How many miles would you walk to turn up at Dracula's door?
This is already starting so well. Disclaimer, so I am new to the Lords of Shadow series.
Yep.
Obviously the revamped Castlevania series. So I guess if you haven't played a Lords of Shadow game before, I'm coming in it from your position, basically letting you know if what my thoughts are, if I thought it was worthwhile. And hopefully there will be something in there for fans of the series as well.
Yep. So let's kick off with story.
Yep.
Because you're Dracula. You're still Gabriel Belmont in this game, but you're now Dracula.
You are.
And you're in a modern setting. So what's up with that?
Well, it's quite interesting because, you know, the game begins with a tutorial where you're sort of at the height of your powers and you've got everything, and it kind of teaches you the basics of combat and that sort of thing. But very quickly after that tutorial, you're dumped into this modern world setting and you've been stripped of all your powers and you're basically this kind of emaciated hobo. And people are like, ugh, because, you know, you've got this horrible, your cheeks are all, and you've got claws and you're nasty, basically. So yeah, I mean, what's interesting about playing as Dracula is that deep down you know that underneath it all, you're this character.
Yeah. It's a really cool twist, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like, you spent like the first game as this virtuous character trying to do the right thing. And then there was that teaser at the end of Lords of Shadow that kind of revealed this modern twist and character twist.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a cool place to explore Belmont from.
Yeah, and the game is, you know, really eager to show Belmont's pain. And to explore, you know,
vampires
his grief.
Are always bloody going on about their pain.
It's very, it's like I said to you, it's very Anne Rice. Like, it's very angsty. Or should I say Twilight now? I suppose it's better to say Twilight. I don't know. Do you guys even know who Anne Rice is?
Well, this game does have Robert Pattinson. Sorry, Robert Carlyle. Sorry, I was getting confused there. That's blob number 2.
Yeah, so the game's very interested in painting this character in shades of grey. So on the one hand, you've got you know, his grief over his wife and his son and all this sort of stuff.
Yep.
And then you've got
his son, FYI, who is now Alucard, who you may remember from Symphony of the Night as the lead character. And so another kind of interesting twist, he shows up in this game.
Yeah. And then you've got this other side of Dracula, which is this villainous side, this horrible villainous side. I mean, you know, just a slight spoiler warning here. In a couple of instances, you know, there's one point where he spews blood. I'm not a fan of that. That's sort of like, you know, this is a character I'm playing. I don't really want a character who spews blood. I know a lot of people would like that. I mean, it's kind of badass.
I'd like that to be a dedicated button in every game I play.
Yeah, see, I'm a bit squeamish when it comes to that sort of thing, so I wasn't so keen on that. But then there's this other, there's a cutscene which is, you know, it was a bit sort of controversial, I suppose, where you need to regain your strength because you're this emaciated dude.
Because you've been in hibernation for hundreds of years, right?
That's right. And there's this family, this cowering family, you know, a husband and a wife and a child, and you sort of, you know, you kill them. You sire, well, you don't sire them because they die. You feed upon them. And that's
beyond your control as well,
correct?
It
is beyond your control, and you just sort of watch it, and it is quite disturbing because, you know, with the guy, he sort of ravages him, and then the woman's like cowering, and then she sort of, you know, and it's slightly sexual in the way that it's filmed, and it's just, and then of course you don't see the child because that's one step too far. But yeah, it is, you know, in that regard, it's going to be a difficult. Well, it's going to be an interesting. I want to see how they're going to develop that character further, because right now he's just kind of like...
It's a bit heavy-handed.
It is quite heavy-handed, and it is quite sort of... Ooh, I mean, do I want to be playing as this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, he's, you know... So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how that's developed.
And the modern day setting is not the only setting, right?
No.
There's also like a castle setting, which is where you spent the
most of of my playthrough. Yeah. It was I mean, it was cool.
So how does that work? How is that castle setting in the modern day in a different place, or is it a different time, or do we know?
It's It wasn't explicitly sort of revealed, but by the end of my playthrough, I was actually able to switch between the two. But yeah, so the modern day setting is very much still quite dystopian and sci-fi tinged. You know, all the enemies are just basically kind of robotic and futuristic, right? And then, of course, when you go into this castle, which does very much feel like you're going back in time, you know, the enemies are more sort of creature-like and skeletons and all that sort of stuff.
Right. A bit more kind of gothic.
Yeah, it's all very gothic.
Yeah.
So yeah, although I did get to spend some time in the modern day New York setting, I didn't really spend enough to kind of get a real feel for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the castle setting was cool. It looks great. It's very gothic. You know, and I really like, and this might have been something in the original Lords of Shadow, but I really liked the idea that everything was kind of running with blood. Like there was this like sort of really
First
nice.
You don't like spewing blood. Now, the more running blood in my games, the better.
It was more the projectile vomiting of the blood.
So it's the vomit. It's the vomit that you have a problem with, as opposed to the blood.
Yeah.
Well, this is good. I'm glad we're getting to the bottom of it.
Yes. So that was my
Continue.
problem. So yeah.
What about a gargoyle spewing blood?
So that would be all right, because it's, you know, it's a gargoyle. It's not.
It's an inanimate
It's a fountain.
object.
It's a fountain.
Okay. All right.
It's not an actual sort of regurgitation.
Yep. Good. Okay. Go on.
Anyway, so yeah, I really liked the idea of like this castle kind of being alive and being sort of, you know, underneath all the floors and flowing through the walls. There's this sort of sense of blood. It's really cool.
And so how like, okay, because there's a couple of things we should mention.
Yeah.
First of all is that, and a kind of Konami rep kind of told us this ahead of time, but essentially shortly after where you played up to, the city setting opens right up.
Yeah.
So unfortunately we can't really speak to that, and we can't really speak to how the gameplay evolves after what, you know, even 3 hours in is relatively early on in the game,
Yeah, it's a
right?
20-hour campaign we've been promised. So.
So with that as a framework, so how was the kind of gameplay balance in the opening few hours, like in terms of combat versus puzzles versus, you know, platforming / traversal, boss battles? Like what was the mix like? I
mean, it was very fluid, but it was also very, very, very linear. Right. And you know, I did feel like my hand was being held through quite a lot of it.
Quick time events?
I didn't actually experience any QuickTime events from memory, but there is a real sense of that. Just nudge the directional button in any direction, and your character will go in exactly the right place. You know, it's very much that kind of streamlined action adventure stuff. But that said, this was the very beginning of the game, so there's going to be a certain degree of hand-holding that's expected.
Yep.
But yeah, I didn't really get to the point where I had many options, you know. But combat is, you know, it felt good, it was fluid, I liked the system. It was very, very similar to God of War, which I believe the first game was inspired by as well.
Yeah. And is that because, you know, you've got like the blood whip, so you've got that kind of ranged attack, feels a bit reminiscent of Kratos.
Yeah.
But then you've also got like
your
the
Void Sword and your Chaos Claws.
So you've got like kind of melee, mid-range, long-range, all kind of accounted for, so it's a matter of kind of switching between those three.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, there's also a great emphasis placed on blocking and successfully evading enemy attacks, which sort of builds up your power.
Right, so
and
that's the focus.
It's you know, it's a cool system, and I did find myself switching a lot. And of course, you know, your void sword, it depletes in power, so you've got to recharge that and all that sort of stuff. So you know, I can see it has great potential, and it feels good.
Yeah,
which I think is really important.
From the footage I've seen, it looks like heaps of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything like, because the first game had that kind of light dark ability to switch between light and dark, and that kind of played into like countering enemies' attacks, and so it kind of like was interesting on a couple of different levels in terms of combat. Is there anything that in the current system that's quite strategic in that sense?
I mean, not obviously so, but then again, as I said, like it's still just super early on. But I did find myself, like, again, there is this emphasis on building up your strength through evasion and through proper timing of blocks. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of the strategy will come from, and it's not just going to be button mashing. Although there is something in there's something in there for button mashes as well. So,
but yeah, I mean, if it's going to have God of War like elements, then the combat has to be very much skill based.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're kind of hoping that this will be like God of War. I mean, the first game was kind of God of War, Uncharted, a few shades of Castlevania, but quite different from previous Castlevania games, obviously.
Yeah.
But I guess what we're hoping for is more God of War, Zelda.
Yeah.
Or just Darksiders. Let's just call it Darksiders.
It certainly reminded me of Darksiders.
Yeah. Which is not a bad thing. That formula is so great. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, no, I mean, the game wears its influences on its sleeve, but when a game is fun, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Yeah.
So coming to it as somebody who didn't play the first one, you said that the first hour was pretty kind of exposition heavy.
Yeah.
Did you feel like they did a good job kind of introducing you to this world? Did it feel a bit too much? Like,
I mean, this is like a minor sort of quibble, I suppose, because with a game that is 20 hours long, it's not going to be that big of a deal if the introduction was overlong when it comes to exposition. But I did find it too. I mean, it was a series of cutscenes, and I don't know about you, but I'm just use cutscenes only when necessary. Basically, is my kind of attitude towards games these days. But how would you know that Dracula's in pain if not for extensive cutscene work? It's true, and of course, this game has got a big, talented voice cast as well. So I did kind of get the sense that they were like, "Oh my god, just let Patrick Stewart talk." It's like. But yeah, no, it was a little too much exposition and a little bit, the very flowery kind of over elaborate language and that sort of thing. And some people might lap that stuff up, but I did by the end of it. I was like, come on, I want to get back into the game. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be a trend that's going to run throughout the game, but yeah, I hope not, because that was a lot of exposition.
So last kind of thing to ask you about, and that is okay, we've got this new character, Dracula. The combat is quite different as a result of that. Outside of combat, are there any other kind of abilities that being a vampire give you that you wouldn't have otherwise? Also, one thing I do want to mention, during combat, if you weaken an enemy enough, you can suck their blood. Just with I think it's B button. I was playing on a 360. Right. And yeah, that's really gory. It's like a fountain, and then they sort of dissolve into a fountain of blood. It's like a reverse blood spew. Blood. Ew, gross. But yeah, there are a couple of other abilities that I was introduced to. So one was a possession ability. So kind of like Dishonored, you get to, I possessed a rat. Kind of like Dishonored. And scurried about. Yep. And my little friend rats all followed me, which I quite enjoyed. I was like the Pied Piper rat. Okay. And you can also possess, again, this was kind of a scripted moment, so I don't know actually how freely available these particular skills will be later on in the game. But I also possessed a much bigger, heavier, robotic type enemy. And, you can only sort of stay in them for so long before they, freak out. So you're sort of moving like that, and, he opened a door.
Oh yeah, and then there was this this bat swarm ability. So there are bats everywhere as well. Bats that tell you where to go when you're platforming and stuff like that. So you just listen to their little squeaks, and then you can see them like resting on your next platform to jump upon. But anyway, you can also use these bats to distract enemies. So I flung bats at this goon. I was going to say guy, but he was also a goon. And then his friend went to check on him, and their attention was diverted, and then I ran up a ladder.
Cool. Okay, one more actually. I told a lie. Boss battles. The first game had some really memorable boss encounters. Some real like kind of like earlier on, like Shadows of the Colossus style kind of traversal bosses. Just some really imposing battles, and they were well designed too. So, did you play any bosses?
There was it was sort of the end of tutorial boss, and again very similar. I was traversing across a big kind of scalable concrete monster. And being fired at by, I've forgotten the word. I've forgotten his name.
Angel.
a guy, basically a guy with a bow and arrow in a big hulking suit of armour, shooting arrows at me while I was traversing across this giant, machine, basically. And of course, it's all sweeping camera angles, and you get sort of thrown off, but not really, because it's all kind of scripted. But it's all very dramatic. And so there are definitely, those are still a central focus of this game, from what I understand.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm really excited about this.
So am I. And one last thing, I do hope that this game comes to next gen consoles, Xbox One and PS4, because it was gorgeous to look at, but it did leave me yearning for the extra shine.
And it never hurts to, because I'm assuming it runs at 30 frames. Always nice to play a game like that at 60 frames as well.
So. And I have a feeling that might be coming. So
cool.
Little hunch.
Little hunch from Little Lucy. Is that patronising? Sorry, I call her that in the office. It's not meant to be patronising.
Anyway,
this is little Cam signing out.
And bye from Little Lucy.